Hey there, welcome to the Reinsurance Podcast, the place where we dive into all things reinsurance, the coolest part of insurance. We're your hosts, Jared and Ben, a couple of ex-practitioners who loved the industry so much we founded Supercede to tackle some of its biggest headaches. And we're here to share our insights and stories with expert guests as we uncover what's really going on in the industry.
Welcome, everyone. On this episode, we are welcoming a very special guest, the hard market. Instagram famous, industry transformationist. Welcome. So we're all being disguised apparently on this episode because we've had to sign loads of waivers of confidentiality clauses. Armies of lawyers have come through to protect identities. But thank you for coming on the show. We're super excited to talk to you.
No problem. Are you guys also going to be obscured?
I believe so.
Just to
keep with the vibe.
Which is a shame because I even wore a t-shirt with an anchor on it today to try and maybe we can try and keep that in shot.
But you've come through London, you're in town, so we thought we'd take the chance to grab you whilst you're here and bring you on the podcast and dive into all things that you see from your side of the market. For those who are unaware with what the hard market is.
Or what Instagram is.
Or we'll start with Instagram and the internet more generally. So Ben famously isn't an Instagram user. I'm an Instagram fanatic. Cordy is as well. We've come across the hard market as an account, which is, you'll tell us all about it, but it's an amazing insight into how this industry works and how it operates. With that, I'd love to learn about like the inspiration behind it and kind of how it got started and where you're going now.
Okay. It was late 2019. I was coming back to the office and there was a kid there that comes running up and tells me, "You've got to see this meme page on LinkedIn." And there's a guy who I think has remained properly anonymous. He's called the Market Hustle, the Insurance Hustle, something on LinkedIn, and he was doing insurance memes, but it was very LinkedIn friendly, squeaky clean, and just sort of, they were great, they were hilarious. And my first thought was that I want to do something like that, but be a little bit more dangerous. So I went home that night. I think I'd gone to the bar, I don't know, and I came home and I was, half drunk, and put together the hard market. I don't even know how I thought of the name. I just kind of spilled it out. Did the first 5 memes you see on the site. They're not funny. Nobody followed. I didn't even, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to hashtag. I didn't know how to do anything. So it had about 1 follower for, I want to say like 6 months. And I didn't even look at it. And then we all got sent home for COVID. And that's sort of where I think at that time, Willis and Aon had announced they were going to merge. And I did that meme from The Simpsons where I think Ralph was on the back of the bus and he said, "I'm in danger." And I put, Willis employees right now. And I tagged the Willis building in New York, which Instagram immediately cited because they knew that I wasn't at the time in New York. But yeah, I had done that, and then all of a sudden it had 2 followers. Somebody saw it, and then I could tell those 2 people must have told their friends because then it had 70, and then 700, and then 7,000 within about 2 months, which was probably the most stressful time I've ever had because that is just enough followers to get you fired, but not enough followers to have any sort of voice. And at that time, I hadn't thought of the social justice part of the site. It was really just making fun of people because we were in lockdown, and I thought I'd go back to work and that'd be the end of it.
Yeah. We love memes as a forum for communicating sort of the comical nature of things that happen in our industry. And I think you do it in an excellent way, but it's a perfect medium to say, here's a comical position of like how this process or these people interact right now. And we do a ton on our LinkedIn as well on memes, but you do such an amazing job on your side.
Yeah, I think we struggle a bit, as do most corporate associated entities, in that we're having to put a filter on, no, that's not appropriate, no, that's too specific, that's too personal, whereas I guess through your anonymity, you're able to push things a little bit closer to the edge.
A little bit closer to the edge, yeah. And the meme thing is so easy for millennials and Gen Z to understand because just obscure scenes from movies, obscure scenes from, whatever, you can make the same inside joke. And it's really fulfilling because you make this joke and so many people relate to it. You're like, oh, we are all thinking the same thing.
It captures a depth of emotion greater than other things. Like it's an awkwardness, but a bit of confusion, but a bit of like versus
super
just
deep.
text or an
That's super
emoji
deep
can.
about
It's
Instagram.
actually so much better in how it can convey that.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the sort of the social justice component, and what was that transition from I'm getting followers, I'm poking fun at how the industry does things in a dumb way, etc., to a now I'm looking at pay review, which is a big one that you do, but also gender inequality issues that the industry faces,
Mhm.
or corporate greed issues the industry faces, or just transparency. We'll talk about other things coming up now in a second. What was that transition from look to hear my memes, I'm getting a ton of followers, to there's a more important things to talk about across this industry?
The use of the story feature in Instagram is the big one. So memes that I felt could get me in trouble or that I didn't think were funny enough to be permanent on the page, I would put in stories, and people replying to them and saying, "Well, you don't know half of it. This is what I've experienced." And I realized that all of a sudden I had this forum where people were telling me things, and it's amazing what people will tell in an anonymous site. Um, I don't know why there's so much trust there, and I hope that it's not misplaced in me. I definitely protect everyone's anonymity, and I'm responsible with the information I think that they tell me. But yeah, people would come forward. I post a joke about one company, and then 50 staff would say, "Yeah, but you have no idea what happened this week, or this and this happened." And so I started to feel that I should be saying more. But you also have to be careful because the information you get is really biased. People are angry at their employers. They're angry at their last employer. They're angry at a deal they're doing or their broker. So you sort of have to corroborate the information a bit. But that's where I started kind of posting things that, hey, has anyone heard about this and this happening? I'd post insurer articles, or I'd post insurance journal articles. Uh, hey, has anyone heard of AIG doing this? Oh, where are we at with the Aon Willis merger? What's going on there? And that's where it became more perform. The pay review didn't come till later, which we can get into, but that was 2 or 3 years into the site.
I guess you mentioned other journalists who do this, I guess, again, from a corporate point of view, and would be maybe more wary of saying things or leaking things that potentially could turn into something big. But do you interact quite directly then with people looking for stories in the insurance media? Or
I interact directly with the insurance media. I only really talk to the insurer. There are things that are said to me that I can't post. It would need someone to look into it. It would need someone with some liability insurance to look into it. Uh, and so if something big comes to me, which is rare, but if someone says something awful, they were treated a certain way, I'll pass it to them and say, you might want to look into this. At that point, I can't just speculate that something has happened to somebody, so I'll send it off to them. I also have a column in that paper, like a Dear Abby type thing, which is my favorite thing that I do professionally. And so yeah, we interact back and forth. They protect me as a source, and I'll again pass stuff to them, and that's nice because they also there's a lot of things they can't say or publish. They toe a really sensitive line between, okay, we rely on these corporate subscriptions, but you can't just be a PR machine where you're giving perfectly curated publicity posts. So it's just I'm able to be more critical, and whereas they're able to do more actual journalism. So we sort of now that doesn't mean we talk every day. I don't sit there and organize every post with them. But again, if there's something I can't really just make a joke about, or it's a bigger thing, you send it to them.
Yeah. Well, it's so clear that there's this obvious niche in the market for this. You have the much more sort of corporate approved communication that goes via that channel, which is then staged into when that gets released and when the sort of
Yeah.
those statements go out, etc. And not only do you have who those sources are, which are oftentimes relatively senior employees who are getting approval to talk to the media, etc.
You then come in. So many of them talk who aren't supposed to. Yeah, exactly. So many of them say things. This is what I do know. So many whisper, and the same comes for me. Correspondence goes out. Please don't talk to the media. Please don't talk to anyone. And they're thinking it's a low-level staff member. I'm like, nah, it's your partner who sits 8 feet away, who's feeding them. You have no idea how senior some of the people are who will tell you information. It is wild.
Very cool. But then you have on yours not only that, but also the junior people who come in. But then you're also able to give this real-time view of a thing. One of my favorite parts of your account is when something's breaking, like the length that the stories get to of like this thing is happening and these people are now confirming this and all these people are saying
Yeah.
this and you get this like snowballing effect of what the story is doing, which is just so much different than like what the insider is going to put out or the insurer is going to put out like on a bi-daily basis or something at best. So it creates a really interesting forum to see some of those stories like developing in real time and getting a sense as to what the feeling on the ground is.
It's scary because you don't. First of all, you'd be surprised at how many people don't understand. You'd be one of these who don't understand that when you post an Instagram story with a lot of text, you have to hold your thumb down.
I literally had to get Jared to show me this morning. I was like, it keeps moving.
It's too fast. I can't read it.
Yeah, it's wild. So I worry that I'm just my stories have become, if there's a big day where something has happened, the stories 7, 8, 9 in a row will become just big paragraphs. I'm like, are people reading these? Like, but if I don't put some kind of commentary and I just put other people's things, then it becomes a bit gossipy. I've been told it gets a little TMZ like when I do that. So the idea is I need to share something but explain I'm aware that this isn't fully, like we haven't shaped out what this is yet. This is just what I'm being told. Here's what we understand and here's how people feel about it. So there is a need to have commentary. And I find most people read it. I do get some older people who I can tell just put together an inbox. They put together an Instagram just for the purpose of following the hard market and they don't really know how to work it. And so they'll come in my DMs and yell at me for all the chat. Why don't you just post it permanently? I don't understand. Like, hold your thumb down. Google it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's with the commentary, I completely agree. And I think one of the things that makes your page so appealing is it's equal parts very entertaining, and the memes and stuff are very funny. And for those who are following this, to give you an idea of the week this was being posted, the drunk like drawings of how the retailers work with the wholesalers who work with the reinsurance brokers, like the dynamic of characters that's like on a napkin, like those things are entertaining, but sort of juxtaposed with really thoughtful considerations and insights around like what's happening in the market, when people should fight for more, when people should take a breather, and this is what's going to happen. Like, so it gives a really nice blend of those two things, which I think is what draws people into it, and which is what drives that sort of viewership and following so high.
I have found that the compassionate humor, which really good comedy, has always been drawn from something, from pain or stress, or I find that the material gets a better response, it gets more laughs if I'm in a high stress situation. I'll wake up with 15 ideas. If I'm coasting through, it's a slow month, I'm not funny at all. So I have found that like expressing some of that angst or compassion is relatable. What's really funny is, are you familiar with like Liquidity, the finance meme sites? So there's
Cody's nodding a lot in the background.
There's like 5 or 6 of them. Some of these guys have like 500,000 followers, and they've been really helpful to me. I've talked to them a couple of times about sort of how they handle what they do, and they do a tongue-in-cheek play on that finance bro New York lifestyle, that New England lifestyle, and it attracts people who understand it's a joke, and also attracts people who really want to live like that. But they do not put any of the compassionate part in there, not in the same way. And I can't do that. That's not how my humor works. So I've always sort of wanted to post stuff that's funny and then also say like, hey, this is a terrible thing that's happening at this company. What do we think of it? How's everyone handling it? And then discussing it from there. And people will open up and tell you more if they feel like they're not just feeding it to some insurance bro.
Yeah. How long did it take you, I guess, to figure out where your curating moral compass almost was, like where your lines were, because presumably you had to experiment a bit, and it's like, oh, I posted that, but now maybe I shouldn't have, or I should have posted that, but how did you figure out where to draw the line initially?
It's pretty much right away. People will tell you, like, I'm just the bus driver. Everybody drives the bus where it goes. Like, they'll tell me in real time what this isn't right. Like, you shouldn't have said this, or this isn't true. Okay, hold on, let me just. Right, sometimes I take it down, I'll repost it, change the commentary, do something. It is rare that I find out that something I posted 2 weeks ago pissed someone off. And usually when that happens, it's because it pissed somebody off in a boardroom. And they, were all whispering amongst themselves when they could have just sent me a note or an email saying, hold on. And I think they are used to treating the media like the media. So they feel like they have to gather and strategize and then, call that newspaper and I'd like to offer a comment. When really you could just send me an email or even send me a DM and say, this is so and so from this. You've got it all wrong. Like, I want it taken down, or at least I want it clarified. And I would do so right away. I'm not in the, this is for fun. I don't get paid for this. I'm not trying to give people bad information. I'm trying to give people a voice to talk to each other because all the execs do. So why shouldn't everybody else?
Well, and this is the really interesting part of this forum is for such a long time, this industry is so curated and the messaging that comes out is so sort of structured. And with certain things, like with collecting data across the industry, you have this really powerful vehicle now to sort of ask questions to the industry, whether it's on pay scale or anything else, and get that sort of unfiltered feedback in and kind of go, okay, here's what we're seeing. And if you think about something like pay scale, we were talking before the show that that discrepancy is just based on like your peers. And so if what you're able to do as you extract data in is you kind of get a benchmark as to what does that peer group look like, rather than it being, oh, someone's on 400, someone's on 50. Well, if they're peers, that's a huge difference. But if those are very different people in very different parts of the industry, like it's not comparable. But like the corporate engine has always had like, here's the line we follow. Here's like the messaging that goes up before bonus period of like what people can expect, so they can kind of control the narrative. And this forum allows you to sort of break that wall down and let the voice of the people. Yet you put something in Latin earlier today. It's like vox populi, vox Dei. And that is very true. This idea that you're giving that voice to the population to like open that conversation up. How have you found that collection of data process? Because I think you have some of the insight that the industry was like values deeply.
This is where Instagram is not structured well. You can't organize the inbox of Instagram at all. It comes in rapidly. And so if I post a thing saying, tell me about your pay, I'll get 300 messages in 4 minutes. And you just open them. You can't open them all. You just open them as you see them. And mind you, a lot of these responses will be like emojis or something. So you have to kind of scroll through those. You open them and then you decide if you want to post it. If there's something that is way off, like if I get a very, very young person telling me they're making $500,000, I will then send them a message saying you're going to want to elaborate on that. If there's somebody making a low amount, I'll go back and say, what's going on? What are you doing? Because more often than not, there's a story there. There are honest to God situations where you get someone in a small city in America in a regional thing and they've been working for one guy who's been feeding them lines for 7 years that they're so lucky to have this job and they should, they're being paid fairly, only to find out they're being paid about 50% of market. That does happen, but more often than not, there's generally a story why someone is grossly underpaid. They've been out of the industry for a while, they're not very good, they're on a performance improvement plan. The company's probably trying to get them out, get rid of them. Like, there's a lot there. And so I'm careful with posting those because they can just incite rage. I was saying this on another podcast a couple years ago. Someone will write in, and this is an example. I don't think this happened, but let's say someone will say, oh, I'm working at Liberty and I'm paid this and this and this. If you don't check it or at least get some context, you could post that. And then the next 30 messages will be from Liberty people screaming about how Liberty's awful. I used to work there, I work there. And the whole conversation can shift into how Liberty sucks. And they don't. And that's not fair. And so you have to keep the bus on the road. You have to keep it there. You have to curate that. So you have to sort of pick these messages from all over and make sure you're presenting them fairly. And it's tough. I think a lot of people want us, the most angry people come in the fastest with what they're making, what their bonus was. And you have to be careful how many of those you post. You got to do good and then bad and then good, and it's tough. And the highest earners often won't come in. Big old wholesalers that are making, millions a year in bonuses often don't come on and tell me. I have to find them and ask me to share it. Like, they don't really, so what you're getting is it shifts the whole thing down. But I do understand that the pay transparency is probably more important to younger people who are starting out their careers. They don't know the part where you start to earn, where you start to grow wealth. They don't know. So I'm okay with it being that group that I'm sharing, as long as they understand that, once it really takes off, it's different for everybody. And it really does have to do with how much you're bringing in or what department you're leading.
Do you get good demographic information out of Instagram? I've never been a account runner, so I don't know what that looks like.
Yes, they tell me, they break down. So those who have been following the Instagram for a long time know it used to be private. I wanted to check everybody before I accepted them, which it grew too big and I couldn't do that. So I moved to a public page. That allows me to put it as a creator, as a business. And now they tell me that they break down the demographics, male versus female, what city I'm in, what country. Like, there's a sizable following in Peru. Lots in Italy and lots in Australia. I mean, obviously it's majority UK and US, but there's a lot dotted everywhere. A lot of the Singapore market comes in.
Your Bermuda boom is about to happen. We're the
yeah.
biggest podcast in Bermuda, so you're gonna get a huge upswell of Bermuda followers.
I thought I got a bunch of them because I didn't think I did, and I did a series of memes about 6 months ago, joking about Bermuda, and like 30 people came in, like, finally recognized us, and I was like, I didn't even know you people were here. Awesome. So that'll be good.
So what are, turning, I guess, to some of those memes, what are the intrinsic things about our industry that make it so meme worthy? What things jump out as, this is great content to you?
Oh, I mean, our industry is full of jokes. It's the more successful people are in insurance, the more self-important they are, which I think is true of any industry. You do well, you're going to kind of think you're some kind of genius. But we're really, the joke I've made a million times is insurance is A+ money for C+ people. We are not Ivy League, people that are like, we're not in finance. It's idiot cousin, as I've said. And so the fact that people think they're curing cancer, but they're just selling insurance, it doesn't mean that what we do isn't important. It just means there's a lot there to laugh at. There's really a lot there to laugh at. And it's not difficult. You can wake up in the morning with 5 different things in your head. Like, you go on a business trip and the type of people you meet in different cities, like, there's jokes everywhere here.
And I guess your daily life as a practitioner probably inspires things as well. When you sit down to do something, you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, pretty much exclusively. A lot of the very gentle negotiations between a broker and an underwriter, especially if it gets tense, there's a lot of humor in that. There's a lot of stress in that, but there's a lot of humor in that. I find a lot of humor in the asinine communication between a corporation and its workers. Those Friday emails from the CEO. I was walking in the woods and I thought to myself, who writes this shit? Like, who is writing this? And it's absolute, I call it word salad. It's a lot of words that I recognize as English, but it is just incohesive, garbled corporate nonsense. I love that. And so I love the act of translating that, saying, I think what they're trying to say is this. And I understand they can't speak plainly. They have stock and shareholders and whatever, and they can't come out with it. But why are you saying anything? Like, so that you have plausible deniability that you said something? Like, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. You're not telling us, like, we know what you're doing. You're trying to get rid of staff. You're trying to automate it. You're trying to run it as lean as possible because you have McKinsey in the corner of the room telling you what to do. Just say it.
We one of the other parts, one of the meme sort of maybe categories or themes that you use a lot, which touches central to our sort of mission and vision of the business, is like about like this lack of data around topics, right? This sort of memes of like, here's like a person holding up a ladder like 30 floors above. It's like looking for a quote. Because in many ways on like that part of the industry, like that sort of what the application form says does not include the information that like, this is how this building is being constructed, or this is how these things are coming together. But these deals are getting written, these risks are being covered. And there's this massive gap as to what we know is happening versus what we're like seeing on paper is being covered. So you have this delta of like, we're just trying to make sure we're getting insurance and reinsurance like put into place with not a ton of clarity about what we're actually covering.
Oh, there is the information you get. This is where our industry is so antiquated. We're receiving submissions via email, and we're asking insureds to send us information pertaining to their business in an application, and then whatever else is relevant. Now, I used to make fun of the likes of Aon, Marsh, and Willis for doing these 300-page submissions, which would still really give you nothing to go off of. I mean, you knew sort of what was going on, but it wasn't being explicit. The insured's website is obviously designed to make that business look better. So you go to the website, and it's supposed to be a laundromat, but it makes it sound like they're aerospace engineers. Like, this isn't an accurate assessment. So there's a lot there, and we're supposed to go and put together legal contracts of which we have no qualifications to discuss, not being lawyers. There's a lot of humor in that. And what's funny is you get questions. I had a submission the other day that was short and to the point, and the underwriter was looking for several questions, and I couldn't find fluff. And I actually found myself wishing I had one of those 200-page Aon submissions, because there's enough in there to be able to word salad your way through these questions. And it's like, none of us are qualified to talk about blueprints. We're not qualified to talk about, where's the geotech report? Anybody reading these? Not really. I mean, you read the summary. So I always wonder how serious that information's taken. I think it's a pad of file, so you can get through an audit. I always wonder how close people are looking at this stuff, other than the actuaries. And I'm sure that they are, but it's such a joke that if this was a real audit process of an insured's business and a real assessment of their risk, this would be a far more sophisticated process. But instead, we're sending 5 and 6 emails broken down into 10 megabytes each just to get it to your underwriters, who open maybe half of it, run it through a rater, and spit out a number. That's how we're doing this?
Yeah.
In
Welcome
2024.
To the 21st century.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really this is why when everyone worries that AI is going to take over, it's like, yes, totally, but not as soon as we think, because AI is like a human. You've got to teach it, and I don't think anybody would even know how to teach it what to look for, because we're not even looking at it.
When you look at sort of the space that you're in, and you have the importance the role you play in looking at the role of technology, how we can do these things better, the sort of gender pay gap issues, the career progression challenges the industry faces sometimes. Like, where do you think the industry's biggest opportunities to improve and grow are?
I mean, this is true of so many white-collar industries. Stop hiring outside. People are, I have someone I used to work with that has gone back and forth between 2 of the alphabet houses, which, by the way, when I say alphabet house, I mean Aon, Marsh, Willis, little locked in, little bit of Gallagher. People ping between those firms just to get raises. And if you stay put, you'd be making half of what you'd be making. And I understand you do need to move around, because the change of flavor is how you're going to grow. But if you're jumping side to side just to get the promotions when you should be getting promotions internally, that is such a simplified thing to say. Oh, we should fix that, because every industry does that. And I don't know. I'd have to talk to more people have like more expertise in hiring as to why that tendency is. Why is there no money until the person gets an offer and then they're leveraging it? Why is HR doing that? Why, if 2 people retire, is that money not being at least a little bit allocated to so-and-so you promised to raise to? I get just as many people coming into my DMs complaining as managers that they're like, I'm tasked with getting my team excited about this firm. We crushed it this year. Tons of bonuses. They have to sit through these idiot town halls where everyone like congratulates each other like it's a mini Apple release party, and only to be told 6 weeks later there's no money. Well, there's really no money this year. Like, how do you not think that that's going to lower morale? I understand you need to celebrate profits because that keeps your stock strong and it makes shareholders happy, and there's earnings calls. I know you have to do that, but then how do you turn around and then you don't give your managers any talking points, or not very many? You just say this is what the bonus pool is. They're given the ability to distribute it how they see fit. They will inherently be prejudiced in doing so. That's just how life works. And then you have people who freak out, and the loudest one might get another $2,000. And how is this how it's done? It doesn't make any sense. Like, banking has it far more organized, and we have so much more discretion in that process, which makes it inherently unfair.
Yeah. And I guess, most of us probably listening will have had these kind of experiences with pay challenges or promotion questions and so on, and that disappearing budget for, bonuses or whatever else. But until the hard market, there wasn't really anyone to share it with, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. But I've seen, from borrowing Jared's phone and scanning lots of the stories, etc., you get people coming to you with incredible stories, like really, really personal, things about things they've been through. What's the worst thing you've been through? What's happened to you in your firm? And they pour when they share. They don't just, give you the highlights. How do you curate that content as it comes to you? Because a lot of your content is now brought to you by your community, I guess.
I have a nasty habit of doing this when I'm traveling or I'm busy, because I'm like, okay, I'll open this up and make it a bit of a forum, because I don't have the time at the moment to create content. So tonight, I'm going somewhere while I'm on the train or something, I will put that out. And then people start telling you really personal stuff. So all of a sudden you're distracted through dinner. Like, oh, Jesus, okay, I got to post this. And so, yeah, you just sort of have to see it, read it, post it, see it, read it, post it. Maybe check in if something's weird. Try not to take too much of it in. People seem to relate to it, and it's very cathartic for them and then very cathartic for the people you read it. So that's where you stand back and let them drive that conversation, let people say what they want to say. Some of it's work related, some of it's things that happened to them while they were working, and it is about how their work handled it. Yeah, you just sort of let them drive that bus. The overturning of Roe was really difficult for a lot of women because there are factors involved in that only they understand. It's philosophical for men, it's personal and physical for women. So they had a lot to say, and then companies were sending out memos about offering travel if they needed family planning services. I think Newfront was the only one that just came out and said, this right is important. If you have a problem, you come to me, I'll put you on a plane, here's what we'll take care of. Everyone else was a little toe the line and vague, but their staff was very grateful that they were saying something. So you can't jump in there. You just have to let people tell you, send you the memos, post them, let everyone discuss it, let everyone kind of get it off their chest and stand back.
I think that's a really important thing to highlight, because as much as it sometimes serves as a forum for people to moan or bitch about something that's pissing them off,
Which is fun.
which is also fun.
It really is. Like the just shitting on your work, especially if I'm in a bad mood, like, and I'm raging, like, come on,
Come at
let's
me, bro.
show.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's where I've got to be really careful, because I really want to like post them, and I've got to be like, all right, hold on.
And
like,
at times, the industry deserves that shake, right?
Oh yeah.
But it also does serve as a forum when people do good and people like are setting out best in practice policies and similar, as a forum to highlight, like, oh, this is excellent. Like, and you're getting some more of those companies, and there was following that the Roe, and there's a bunch of other companies who'd come out making their statements. So it's like they too are going to work to be a supporter of their employees. So it was a really good forum to see firms that were being proactive about being good, but also it's a great place to be like, here's this memo that's come out, so like stuff's going sideways here, what do you know? And you get that information roll in as well, so you get to kind of balance both of those.
I like when I know a company has done something because it was on the hard market. You can't always tell, and it's not something I take credit for. It is from the discussion that the hard market is fostering. I'm just a receptacle for it. But there are times. There was one company that posted their staff that was going to be going to a conference, and I know that that company employs a lot of senior women, very good underwriters. I know that those women were going to be at that conference. I know that this was probably somebody in marketing who had the headshots of the men and didn't have the headshots of the women. And I posted that and just said, like, come on. Like, you have a staff of 15 senior underwriters. You posted a flyer that had 5 of them, and they were all like older white dudes. Like, what are you doing? And then they fixed it within 3 days, and I could tell that it had to do with the availability of headshots, because when they reposted it, some of the photos weren't headshots. So this company wasn't bad. They didn't do anything wrong in their hiring. It's just how it looks, and sometimes people forget how that's going to make people feel, how it's going to make women feel. I get a lot of people in my inbox then are like, why don't you just lay off this stuff? It doesn't have to all be about women and men and gender. I'm like, well, but it's always dudes that say that. It is about that for a lot of people, and it makes people feel a certain kind of way when they don't see themselves represented. When people of color don't see themselves represented because the cover of some magazine where some company is like celebrating itself and goes, these are our execs, and it's all 65-year-old white dudes, like, that is going to make people feel a certain way. The reason why I know that is that cover will be sent to me in PDF form 37 times in my inbox, being like, look at this. And so that's why I'm posting it, is not because I'm trying to single-handedly be a social justice warrior. It's because everybody is commenting on it. It's the voice of the people. The voice of the people are saying, this is shit, this looks bad, what are they thinking? And then I post it and say, what are you guys thinking? And they turn around and they fix it. And it's a lot of times just unchecked marketing departments who just aren't paying attention to what something sounds like or what something looks like. So I'm there to just sort of poke them, go back and fix it, and now we're okay. you need to check in a balance. And I'm here to poke fun at you for that. A lot of times I hear people say, oh, you want to end up on the hard market. You don't want to end up on the hard market. You don't.
Completely agree.
So don't post dumb shit.
It's this new and kind of very beneficial peril of the Twitter storm, I guess. What social media can do to get the industry moving. Probably a lot of people find themselves, especially those without Instagram, thinking, why is nobody talking about this? Or, oh my God, how is this being allowed to happen? But actually, there is now a place where people can be talking about it, raising it. And it's not, as you say, you coming to the world and saying, here's my particular set of views or the justice I want to execute is much more, no, this is what everyone is thinking.
And they're lucky that I don't understand Twitter X that well, because that would turn the DM feature public. They would really see what people think and are saying. I like to think I'm somewhat responsible to keep the conversation somewhat level. The ones that come out of left field are the real like vitriolic stuff. I try not to let that in. It doesn't help anyone. If this was on Twitter, that would all be public and it would be mayhem. And people would be even more guarded. Companies would be even more guarded in their communications because it would just create a firestorm. Like they're very lucky that the most I do is poke them or make a joke or whatever. And I try to curate it. Like, what if I was just really irresponsible and wanted to run a tabloid on Twitter? That's not hard. That's lazy. I could easily do that. Instead, it's more just, hey, maybe rethink the way that this looks.
But going into this sort of the voice of the people thing, one of the ones that's just beginning now on your page, and people who are following it will begin to sort of watch this develop in real time. But the piece that's come out from Willis, kind of what's happening here, because all we've been sort of teased to start is Willis essentially preempting staff saying, do not talk to the hard market, which doesn't work so well because that prompts direct interaction with you. But what are we seeing happening here?
They didn't say don't talk to the hard market. They said don't talk to the media and don't talk to any private entity or something. I don't know how they worded it, something like that. And this is not
a euphemism for the hard market.
Yeah, don't talk to that person. That is not unique. Big companies send out that communication all the time, and I understand why they do so. They want to control the narrative of what they're doing, and I can appreciate that it's probably very frustrating when you're making a business decision. You're communicating as much as you feel you can, and then you have some jerk online that's just running a whole discussion forum, and it may not be based on the full facts. I get that frustration. That memo even expressed that they felt transparency was important, meaning he wasn't coming after them for discussing pay. And actually, I have found that the larger firms are sort of okay with that. Those larger firms have good HR. They're okay with the way they pay people and how that's organized, so they don't mind when it's discussed. It's things like, Willis Towers Watson moving some admin roles overseas, and that has been communicated, but it does have a lot of people really scared. And I also want to be clear that while Willis has communicated it, according to people that have come in, it's not just them. It is a lot of these larger firms have non-client facing, very data entry, put the address on a cert role that they feel could be outsourced overseas, and a person will be assigned to each team or each account specifically. So it's not like you're sending it into some like center of excellence. It's just going to be like this person works on this account, so you can go to them to issue certs, etc. That is how the people in my inbox are explaining it to me. I'm not an employee of Willis. I don't know, but that is how it is explained to me, and so that makes sense. But then I also have people who have that title who have not been communicated with, or who are worried that they need to update their resume. And they've said, no, I do have client-facing roles. It's not just pure admin. For those people, I think that they're probably in a different part that's not affected by this, or they will be promoted. I don't know. I can't speculate for that. I just know that when these things happen and they're communicated kind of in a little bit of a guarded way, again, I know a company, why they have to do that. It scares the hell out of the staff. And they all come running to the hard market or to local recruiters or to anyone they know, and it freaks them out. I don't know how to fix that. I've never worked at that level, but you can't tell people not to talk to each other. You can't tell people not to talk to an Instagram. If there's a hole in the information, it's going to create a vacuum, and they're going to make up stories. I will try to keep that train on the tracks, but it is what it is. I mean, there is a sense and a fear that McKinsey is always in the room trying to cut as many people as possible, not to reallocate money so staff can get better paid, but to suck it straight up to the C-suite and give it straight to the shareholders. And that if these companies could run the entire firm with a computer and 3 guys in a room, they would do so in a second. They would cut us off in a second. And so there is this feeling that there is no compassion. This is not employee owned. This is not a culture. You want us to rah-rah at all the conferences about our firm, but ultimately you will cut our knees off the second you have the technology that allows you to do so. So that rage that comes in my inbox has to sort of be managed. And okay, what do we know? Who's anyone been fired? Can you clarify what these roles are? And I will say, with the specific case of Willis, it has overwhelmingly been explained to me that it is very, very admin. And people were promoted out of that role. They were just eliminating the role, so they took the people who had that role and moved them to a different position, gave them more client-facing skills, or they're training them to do something else. So they've managed it as best they can. I think it's just still, there's a feeling that a seismic shift is coming towards first outsourcing and then automating the most data entry kind of very, very admin part. Should also note that there's a DEI push in all different aspects of the industry, and some of these data entry roles, $25 an hour entering addresses on a cert, those are overwhelmingly held by older people and by women who've had this role for a really long time that come into my inbox and tell me they feel like it's too late for them to obtain new skills. So they kind of feel shut out. For so many years, those of us who are younger, have commented that the technology in insurance is absurd. And the technology that's come out in the past 10, 15 years has really been more about collecting data and ripping data from the clients so that we can put all the data together and then start measuring what everything is. I mean, some of these big firms are making more money off their data than they're making off of insurance sales. So these programs felt clunky because they were ripping data. They weren't there to manage workflow. Now, AI in the past 5 years has come out and is going to make workflow much easier to manage and much more automated. So the first people that get cut are the people that we have made deal with these clunky pieces of shit for the past 15 years. You sold a policy that had this premium, this limits, this effective date. You have made them enter it on this spreadsheet, on this cert, into this program, into this program, this program. You have basically had them cross-referencing data for 9 hours a day. And then you're like, oh, well, you don't have any client-facing skills. Sorry, we don't need you anymore. Now we have AI. It just feels impersonal and it pisses people off. And it's not Willis, it's everybody. It's absolutely every firm that has the money to do so is going to do it.
Yeah. And it's almost crazy, I guess, that we're talking about it in this sense, but you're saying the solution in the interim is not even that the AI revolution is going to take over the industry, but actually there's this interim step that our industry is going to go on towards outsourcing or offshoring.
Yeah. Trying to assess what it actually is, and then figuring out how you're going to automate it. You outsource it first, the simplest parts, you automate it, and then you do the next step and the next step. And I understand there should have been automation and data entry years ago. So I understand why you're doing it. It's just that you weren't interested in automation. You were interested in the data. You wanted people to enter this 17 times. You were not interested in getting these programs to talk to each other or to get that spreadsheet to automatically populate over them, to enter it and enter it and enter it and enter it so that you could then do whatever you were doing with it, selling it. And that's what you're interested in doing. And now that there's this workflow automation, courtesy of AI, now you want these programs to talk to each other, and you're going to cut the knees off of all the people who've been entering the data. That is how business works. This is a technological revolution. It is what it is. Nobody did anything wrong. It just scares the living shit out of people. And they're going to come into my inbox and tell me about it. And I understand why Willis doesn't want people to do that, but I can promise all of the alphabet firms and everyone, all the companies, they will continue to do so. So just speak plainly to your people. And I should finally say that, yes, people come into my inbox and worry and complain about stuff. They also come in with incredible loyalty. There's a lot of loyalty to Willis, a lot of loyalty to Locked In. Something's going on the West Coast with Locked In. People come in like, no, this is okay. Here's why. I do get the good too, and I try to post that.
Yeah, you're getting this transition where if people are investing in good technology, and we see this a ton with Supercede, where people who are buying our software because it's transforming the work that they have to do, and it's removing the tedium from that task, and it's allowing them to spend more time doing interesting things that they care about. There's a massive upswing of support for that and loyalty to the firms for adopting more modern ways to do that. Um, and I think it's in many ways allowing them the freedom to do what they actually like to do by taking away the stuff that they have had to do historically. But that applies for most of our users, relatively senior teams, actuaries and the like, who aren't sort of at risk of that sort of $25 an hour job being ripped out. So you're seeing there's a new role that technology is going to play in this sphere, and industry and companies have to make that transition very thoughtfully around how do we empower the team and allow them to do more impactful work? How do we get more data? How do we use that more efficiently and all of that? But at the same time, how do we not? You had this McKinsey in the room moment, right? Anecdotal. I was talking to someone the other day, and it was like on that sort of that town hall forum when someone says the quiet thing out loud, and they essentially said to the whole company,
and disappears.
Right,
They
right,
disappear
yeah.
after that. You never hear from them again.
They said to the whole company that we have too many people. Again, McKinsey saying based on how much money you're making of too many people, and then immediately followed by how long until AI can do all of this stuff? And the person, like you're saying, looking, going, the complexity of what we see in like a zip file full of garbage and a couple PDF attachments is so nuanced. Like, it's not going to be by Thursday, Frank.
We don't even know what we want the AI to do yet.
Right.
Did you hear about
This is like this is the McKinsey sort of over their shoulder kind of voice.
Absolute. Oh, I could go on McKinsey for a whole podcast.
The second one. Next time you're in town, we'll do that one.
You heard about the Amazon Fresh thing, right?
I know. I don't know.
Amazon Fresh are these grocery stores. They're in America and they're in the UK, and their whole thing is you can just walk out, just grab stuff, walk out. And AI, a combination of cameras, AI, this is so great, we can do this. And they find out that, yes, but it was actually a bunch of guys overseas staring at the camera, trying to assess what people actually bought. It had a lot of errors, etc. They were eventually going to develop a technology that was going to let people do that was going to have sensors. I imagine it to be similar to in a hotel minibar. It knows that you've taken something. I think they were developing the technology, but in the meantime, in the interim, while they were building the business, they were literally just using cameras and a bunch of very, very low-paid people in Manila looking at it and organizing it that way. And now they're doing away with that technology. They don't have it. So this is where people are often suspicious of, we're outsourcing this. You're eventually going to automate it. You just don't know how to automate it because AI is like a human. If you weren't able to streamline the workflow with humans, what makes you think you're going to be able to tell a computer how to automate something? You will be able to populate data. You will be able to make some of that easier. But ultimately, how this manages this and how this information makes it here and what the information even means, you have to teach the computer to do that.
Yeah.
It's this kind of Wizard of Oz testing approach.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it. They did a similar thing.
They were totally faking it till they made it, and they didn't make it. It's gonna we're gonna keep seeing that happen.
Like when they introduced ATMs, like to get cash machines, as we call them. The first ones they made, they literally just had a person on the other side of the facade of the machine, like
taking your card from you and giving you the money back on the other side. And I think
what we'll see here might be a bit like in the travel industries post-pandemic, where after they've let a load of people go because they've got this other thing they want to try, and then they find out that it turns out the technology is really hard.
It's really hard.
Suddenly you're going to have this
surge of, we might need to recruit all those people that we've let go who've now changed life, changed attitudes.
Somebody will get it right. They'll get it right. AI is totally taking over our jobs. It's going to happen. I just don't think it's happening as soon as we think. And I think that until we can nail what we want out of the workflow, we can't tell the computer what we even want because we don't know what we want. We're not selling a commodity. The price is set depending on the deal. Like there's no way to automate something like this right now because we don't know how to teach it.
I think this is the failing that our industry has had, and we look at it more from a reinsurance specific lens, but I think it applies to the broader insurance sector as well. But this industry has had a very bad sort of history of thinking what the grandest, most ambitious new world will look like. We should do that.
No idea how they're going to get there.
No idea what the steps are
going to be. Like what we want is we want to have a hurricane come through, and then every single home is, as the claims are being paid, the reinsurance is like. what are you talking about? Like this idea that like I bumped into someone with my vehicle, and then as like at the point of that interaction, my account has been injected with $3,000 for
They're
the.
like, yeah, sure, I agree, that would be amazing. But we are so
The one that always makes me laugh is we were at a conference once, and we had somebody stand up. I think it was like Blueprint 2 or Blueprint 1 at the time, or whatever it was. And they said, I know we've been running into some difficulties and there's lots of delays, but the thing that keeps me going is that one day we'll have this Minority Report style, like, wall that we can touch and interact with.
dragging files around a clear
glass computer. I was like, what? What?
That movie has set up how people think the future is going to look. It's like, no, it doesn't need to. First, you need to figure out what you want for technology before you can have the technology.
One of my favorite analogies on this transition is we're really bad at looking what the future will be from a technology point of view. And the Jetsons, a cartoon from the 1950s, which you're far too young to know about, but might be aware of, like,
We're the same age.
culturally. But when the Jetsons thought of the future, it was like driving cars that still had traffic jams and everything else. And then you had robots that just did your dishes, like in the way that you do dishes. You know, Linda from the
Yeah.
1950s, we're like standing over the sink doing the pans. But what we got in reality was we realized we want clean dishes. So we built dishwashers. You just set them all in there, and then that machine, like we don't have an automatron. What's the like computer person?
Invent your own
But
one.
we don't have like a humanoid robot doing our chores. We have machines specifically designed for specific tasks: washing clothes, washing dishes, like a Roomba to just do the vacuuming. Like that is how it will look in our industry as well. There'll be versions of like, oh, you have this one horribly tedious task, and now there's software that makes that one task better. Not AI for the whole industry to do every different job, but like, what are the specific compartmentalizable tasks that exist that can be the dishwashers of insurance and reinsurance,
How
and
do
the
we?
washing machine of dishwasher and reinsurance?
You don't think that we need to figure out how to adapt office chairs so that robots can sit on them?
That's like,
Well, there was a publication in, I think it was the late 1800s, maybe 1890s, and it's something where they were visualizing what they thought the year 2000 would look like. And they were like, okay, it's a comic book drawing of it. And it was, you know, a woman cleaning her house, or a maid cleaning, and she was dressed the same, the furniture was the same, except all the chores were being done by this machine with like long arms and a rector set looking situation. And you're like, that's because all they could think of was automating the tasks that they were doing using a machine. That's all they could think of. So when we are facing, you know, looking at AI and realizing the things that are possible with it, it's like we don't even know yet what we need from it. Otherwise, we would have invented that. We can't ask it to invent it for us. We can just ask it to do it, and all we can do is ask it what we want, and we don't know that yet. That's why some vendors, computer vendors in insurance, like cert tracking software, to a lot of people seem so small. It's just tracking certs. That's a specific task that takes a long time to deal with, a lot of admin, a lot of tracking other policies when they're coming up for renewal. That simple thing was taken care of by a computer. They're going to get AI involved in that now, and that's going to be better than you've ever seen. A simple task. While people over here are thinking, how can I revolutionize the whole industry? And I'm McKinsey. How can I just get rid of all the people and own all the water and do everything? It's like, we're not there. Let's look at the task in front of us and how we can make them easier to do.
So what do you see as your role when there's like a bit of a panic like this, where lots of people are coming to you and saying, oh, you know, this is happening at my firm and at other firms? How do you step into that space with your great power comes great responsibility?
seriously kind of
No, I
challenge.
tell them to learn insurance.
Yeah.
Just learn insurance. Yes, they'll automate things like, you know, I think personal lines and auto and some things that you can just enter it into a machine and spit something out. But if you work in like really specialized insurance, like they'll throw money at you if you really, really know what you're doing. If you understand and can explain to people, you know, I was talking to somebody about an excess policy the other day, and it needed some things, and the person was a younger guy and he didn't understand it. And he was like, aren't you just over engineering this? I was like, oh no, you don't understand it. Like you've been grinding the markets, but you don't understand the actual the product. It was a retailer, and he didn't get it, and it was like, you need to learn insurance before you go shouting about wanting more money. You need to be able to be in a room to your client when the client's really upset because their insurance quadrupled. You need to tell them why, and show them how well you've done and what markets you've stress tested and the product you've built for them. Until you can do that, your head's on the chopping block, or you're not going to get the raise that you want. And so it's pretty much like when people come in with, what do I do? What do I do? What should I take? Learn insurance. Just learn it. Find a mentor and learn it. Where should I go to learn? I don't know. Like, the best way to learn is by doing a really hairy deal. There's a lot of stuff with URMI that teaches stuff. There's good, webinars here and there out there. You kind of have to look for it. Google, even if there's a term or a form and you don't understand what a primary non-contributory endorsement does, Google it. Tons of great white papers. Stop every time there's a concept you don't understand and learn it. If you don't understand it, send me a message, and I'll find someone who knows it or whatever, point you in the right direction. But if you're not learning insurance, you're not helping yourself out. You're just trying to collect the next paycheck, and wealth is not grown through salary. Not anymore. So you can chase $5,000, $10,000 raises all you want, but until you are an expert to where somebody wants to really pay you the big bonus, or they want to give you equity in your firm, etc., that's how you grow wealth. And you can't do that until you really know what the hell you're doing, by being either a technician or a manager or something that is invaluable. That's when you get the big money.
And that's this, especially with the younger generation now, that impatience that comes in, or they want that straight away. It's like, you don't have the value straight away. No. You still, we can't really in front of the client to talk about these things because you don't know what you're talking about. Like, and you get to this threshold where you and like us, like, don't know all of it, but are incredibly comfortable knowing what you don't know. So in that meeting, when someone says something, you're like, walk me through what you mean by that, and having a level of confidence in that statement, knowing that the threshold of everything else that you do know in that meeting is so sufficiently high that, like, that little niche thing that they're referencing, they will know is actually incredibly niche, and they're happy to, like, but you have to clear those hurdles, because if you go in asking very basic rudimentary things, you then just make yourself look like an absolute noob in that conversation. So
should I do broking or underwriting? Where will I make more money? You'll know. Like, once you know insurance, you'll know where you belong. But there are exceptions either side of that. But that's a perfect example. That's like, whenever I do a Q&A, the most basic question I get is, where will I make more money? It's like, oh my God. Okay. Like, I can see someone saying, I'm an expert at this, this, and this. Do you think it will be lucrative for me to move into reinsurance? Someone who has an aptitude for programs or putting together books of things. Yes. Like, I understand the question of wondering if something will be lucrative. How would you survive there? If you're like, oh, I'm in, I don't know, doing this weird thing. Should I do energy? Should I move over to auto and move to be a retailer from whole? What? It's an entirely different side of the industry. Why would you do that to yourself?
I guess, speaking of the accumulation of knowledge and sort of your own personal insurance expertise, do you ever consider I'm going to take the hard market full time and that's my new thing, or B, actually I could be really valuable as the global head of something, big insurer or broker or something?
I mean, I'd love to be a global head of something. I can just kind of sit at my desk and say, that goes over there and that goes over there.
Yeah.
Though I appreciate that tough decisions are made by those people.
Yeah.
Because you've accumulated such a specific perspective on the way the industry actually works, right? You hear things and see things that nobody else is seeing.
I think it would be too much. Like, because if let's just say I were to enter an exec role, like Mike Chang has at Willis, knowing what I know about what people say to me, like, and then you try to make everyone happy, I'd probably spin off the planet. I don't think I would take the hard market full time unless I knew. I'm really interested in the academics of insurance. I love the deal. I am a proper, like, student nerd of insurance, and so it would be hard for me to let that go. I always want to sell the next thing, build the next program. I really like programs.
Reinsurance, as you said.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it would be hard. It would have to be an unbelievable opportunity. That being said, I do sometimes get frustrated that I don't have the time to do more with the hard market. Like, I like the idea of making it a new URMI. When I started, everyone had the URMI books, the big books that were in their offices, commercial general liability, commercial property, the additional insured book. They had one on wrap-ups, one on construction, one on contractual risk transfer. There were hundreds and hundreds of pages, but you could reference them as you went along. And every time I was doing a deal, I would look at it, and it was there. They have those things through Vertifor online, but like companies don't pay for subscriptions anymore, and people don't know where to go. And I mean, these things, they would have like an annotated version of every additional insured endorsement and tell you what it's doing and why. And this is why we drafted it in 1997, and then we changed it in 2001. It does this. So when you have like a real coverage wonk client going through, you could respond. That is how you learn. And that's not really available anymore in a format that younger people like to deal with. I would love to take the hard market to a more modernized version of that and have a site that you could enter, and it would have this information and have white papers on different topics. It would have a job board. It would have I don't know, like a fishbowl-y kind of thing where people could talk about stuff. And that would take a staff and years to build. And if I did it alone, it'd be nowhere near the amount of money I could make doing insurance, which I love. So it would have to be somebody would have to come to me with a whole concept, because I don't see how I can. That's like a dream, but it's not actually what I mean. I still love my job. The reason why I spend so much time talking about insurance on a goddamn Instagram is because I do love insurance. I love our industry, and I think it's a vehicle with which you can lead a really interesting life.
Yeah, and I think it probably puts at rest a lot of people's potential concerns that you're out there, as the hard market, that you have clearly such good intentions for the industry, right? You haven't also answered that last question to say we're going to turn it into a huge trade union and fight the bad guys.
Fight the man.
Yeah, exactly. It's more
that'll be good.
actually let's work together to
It's a really good way to get murdered in my bed. I mean, and that's that balance. I wouldn't be a trade union because I'm still an apologist for the industry. I even sat here and said, like, despite the fact that Willis is freaking everybody out, fully understand why they're doing this. And I would probably make the same decision if I were in Chang's shoes. Like, I understand what it is and the decision that he's had to make, and why he's implementing this. So I could never really be the union leader because I am an apologist for the industry, which puts me smack in the middle and infuriates a lot of people.
I think when you follow the page, and at this point I feel all the listeners have officially followed the page, but you do get this sense of poking fun at things and challenging things, but because it matters, because you care about, because the
industry
has its goodness, it should be better, it has areas to improve, but in the way that we can make fun of it because we love it, in the way that we do like in all of
relationships in our lives,
right? And I think it always emanates that sort of tone, which I think is one of the reasons it makes it as appealing as it is as a page to follow.
To which point, best and worst things about working in insurance for you?
Best and worst thing about working in insurance. The best is, it's all encompassing, but that we get paid to do this, that you get to travel. I work in a part of the industry where it's kind of production, and I have been so lucky to work for managers who have just let me chase whatever crazy thing I'm on. And I've done wildly different things, different types of deals, whatever, and I'm able to sort of like, would put that over there, and it's really good for like an ADD person like me, just like to kind of piece it up and whatever, and they kind of let you be you and find the deals that are interesting to you. You got to bring in money, and it's got to somehow come together. But I've had an unbelievable amount of freedom to get on a plane and go find stuff and do what I need to do. And when you're young, it is an endless, relentless grind. Cold call, cold call, cold call, a submission flow with a bind ratio of like 10%. Okay, if I get up at 6 in the morning and I grind until 10 p.m., yeah, I can answer all my emails, but this can't really be what it all is. No. As you get into your 30s, it's more targeted. You know what you're looking for. You know how to find 5 deals that are going to go. And so that was a big relief, because in my 20s, I just thought, this is fine and all, but like finding an exciting deal takes too long. And this is too much of a grind. It does become more focused as you become an expert. So that, once I got my feet on the ground and got the ball rolling, that's the best, because it makes me feel like, wait, all I got to do is that, and then I get paid? This is wild. And I get to eat really good food, and I get to get, stay in nice hotels. This is wonderful. I understand why old retired dudes suffer greatly when they no longer have that beautiful expense account. They still come into town to go to some lunches because they miss it so much. And the worst part is the stunning unfairness with which managers, and I say boomers, and this is not to generalize the generation, it's only that the most senior managers tend to be boomers. The stunning amount of unfairness which they can act. And I had a boss in New York that was brilliant, but he would listen to the first 10 seconds of what someone was saying and already made an assumption. It didn't matter if it was right or wrong. That's what it was, and this is what it was going to be. And it was extremely prejudicial in how he did that because he wasn't hearing the whole story. So he would make decisions about a deal or about a staff member, and that's what it was. And I was like, this isn't fair. Like, you haven't assessed this. You're hiring so and so's son. You're just perpetuating what this industry already is. You're not broadening the scope of the search. You're not broadening the scope of the research. It's just you're able to do that. Well, it's an old boys club. They can do whatever they want. It's like, can we stop saying that? We say, oh, that's just how he is. No. Like, you should be held accountable if you hire a staff member who's somebody's son or was your caddy at the golf club, or if you're letting the young guys who go golfing because they happen to golf with you and then they're being promoted and the younger women on the team aren't because they're not getting that FaceTime with the boss, and then one of those kids gets promoted before he's ready and he screws up, which will happen, the manager who let that happen should be held heavily accountable. There is an unfairness to the industry that is devastating for those who are not the beneficiaries of it. And I feel their sadness and rage in my inbox every day. And I have no problem dealing with it myself because I'm a fairly bold person, but there are people who are shy and who were raised not to make a big fuss and who just want to make a paycheck to bring home to their families, and they feel like they're never going to get a shot.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant that you're speaking truth to power in this way. Are there any...
I'm going to get killed, but...
No, we'll look after you.
Yeah, we'll look after you.
To the extent that
You've got an army of bodyguards to go with your army of lawyers. No, but one of the things to that point, which I think is really interesting, you talked really earlier on about this industry being like an A+ industry with
C+ talent and things.
I think some of it does stem from that. Like, there's this point that if you bring in like B-rated people, they will attract B-rated talent, and if those people are self-conscious, they will attract C talent, so they feel better. So it's like that sort of nepotism and those sorts of like hiring decisions early on perpetuates a challenge for that we have in attracting the best talent to this industry. Because if you are an unbelievably talented individual and you go into a firm and you're doing an amazing job, and then someone's cousin gets promoted above you because they're better at golf than you, like, of course you're going to leave this going like, all right, I'm going to go into bank, I'm going to go into tech, I'm going to go somewhere where I can actually achieve on my own merits. And that, us sort of cracking that, I think, not only improves what it's like to be in this industry, but I also think improves the talent pool and the quality of people who are in this space, and make it one where the best people here want to stay here. So I think it's a multi-layered challenge, but that point you raised there really highlighted that kind of talent challenge we have as a space.
Yeah, one bad manager can chase someone out of the industry entirely. That's probably, other than learn insurance, the number one piece of advice I give to people is don't leave the industry. Like, don't, I think about going back to school. Don't go to law school unless you want to be a lawyer. You're just going to rack up $200,000 in debt. If you want to be a lawyer, by all means, like, do it. But if you're just like trying to buy yourself some more time at the expense of debt, like, you're just going to end up going into that field and all of its challenges. Instead, just leave. I mean, I've had managers that are there's one I had, and he gets hired in New York to run firms, and he gets fired every time. Like, we're going to run this wholesale office, and then I'm going to run this thing, and now he's running another one right now. And he just goes from one to one to one, and he gets fired every time. And the fact that he's still employable is remarkable to me. And he was so toxic, it would chase people out of the industry, certainly women. And there are a lot of those dinosaurs still around. There are also younger people who are extremely toxic, and they chase talent out and really crush spirit. And it's just awful. And again, they should be held heavily responsible whenever something doesn't work out or whenever someone leaves the industry because they're so miserable. Stay in the industry. For every crap job, there are amazing ones. And even if you move somewhere and it's not what you thought it was, stay, learn what you can from it, leave again.
Going back to the point, one of the questions you get in your inbox all the time, this, should I be a broker, should I be an underwriter? Because of the opportunities that this industry affords you, it's like, what is interesting to you? What are the things that if we sort of establish the fact that learning is the most important thing, like, you are more enticed to learn things that you are genuinely interested in. And this industry has a plethora of them. So, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to run around building programs and doing deals? by all means, like there's a spot for you here. Do you want to dive deeply analytically into things and what's working, how it should be priced, and what's the risk we're taking on for it? By all means, there's a place for you here, but like spend more time thinking about what you want out of it, what you care about, and then ask the question, now that because this is what I care most about, I'm most interested in, now where should I go? That creates a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, it's what makes that question so tough to answer, because the people asking it don't know anything about our industry. So we say, like, oh, what do you like to do? How do you like to analyze stuff? It's like, I don't know how to explain to a very, very young, brand new person, the way a treaty reinsurance broker would look at something versus how a direct wholesale broker would look at something, and the personality traits of a wholesale broker and who they're getting the business from and who they're sending it to, and why the E&S markets are wholesale and the admitted markets are direct. Like, I don't know how to explain that. All you can do is park yourself somewhere in the middle of the party. Do some admin, because all the first jobs are admin. Just do some stupid admin, of which you'll learn very little because it's more about doing the task. So you think you'll learn it, but you won't. And park yourself in the middle and then start talking to people around you, start going to industry events, start whatever, which is hard to do when you're junior. You don't always get invited. And really just kind of start to look around. And that's when you realize, okay, wholesalers are like this. Retailers are like that. One of my very best friends is very senior in an alphabet house situation, and that role is perfect for them. Like, they thrive in that corporate environment because they understand how to make it work for them. Couldn't be a better gig. Not necessarily for me, mainly because I run an Instagram that pisses them off every day. Not really, but like you have to kind of work in the industry for a little while before you are even able to know enough to make that determination, which is why I tell people to just learn insurance. Learn the industry and learn insurance. You'll know where the money is. And people who are the most successful in reinsurance or broking often didn't start there, or they certainly didn't start writing the product they're currently writing. They found it, they bumped into it sideways, realized they had an aptitude for it, and ran with it.
And the best people, the smartest people who know how it all works, they can go to either side of this table and get paid. Like, the money's there it's not like, oh, you'll make more here or there. It's like, you make more by knowing what you're talking about. Like, because that becomes transferable across companies, across, dividing lines at the table between underwriting and broking and wholesale or whatever.
So just because I'm wary that we've kept you for ages and we've been a bit greedy with your time, one thing I wanted to ask you...
I've got a London lunch, so I got a pint swap. What do you think I'm going to do when I'm here?
Exactly.
But before we let you go to your London lunch, I did want to ask you, as you look ahead to the rest of 2024, we talked a lot about talent and AI. Are there any other themes that stand out to you? Hornets' nests that need kicking, pigeons?
Oh, God, I hadn't prepared that. In 2024, one thing I will say is, we didn't get into this, the pay review thing and why I did that. I did the pay review thing 2 years ago. I started, and I posted it just like, again, it was me not having any content for that day. Hey, would you guys get paid? Posted, a couple answers, and it snowballed. And I went from 19,000 followers to 27 in a week. It blew up. That's where the insurer paid attention. That's when the site really, really, really took off for me. And it was funny because I hate it. And I don't know if I said this before, I hate the pay review so much. And I hated it then. I hated doing it. I didn't think it would take off because I never wanted to know what other people made. Again, I've always been attracted to production-based jobs where the bonus was tied to what I did and what I brought in, because I never had anybody to blame but myself. Discretionary type bonus structures always made me feel like I was being screwed, even if I wasn't. I never had that information, but it was important to other people, and I can tell by the response, so I knew that I needed to do it, and so I did. But there is a concern I've always had that the message is often received by the wrong people. I get a lot of, and I can understand, I'm trying to remember how I felt when I was 23, 24, and if I had seen another 24-year-old jump on there saying that they were making 80 grand plus a 90 grand bonus because they work for a hot producer at RT or something, I would have freaked out and wanted to quit and upend my life, and that's not what you should do. Everybody kind of meets in the middle. if you're really good at this job and you advocate for yourself, by the time you hit 30, 31, 32, I don't know, 35, you'll kind of come together. There's always going to be the guy that's off the charts because he's in a sales role. There might be a guy who gets to slide into like a heavy management position at an alphabet. But if you're okay at what you do, everyone kind of meets there. In your 20s, it's a crapshoot. It sort of just depends on what you're doing. And it's difficult because people use their salaries and their bonuses as a barometer for how they're doing against their friends. They're not mad they're making 100 grand. They're happy to make 100 grand. They're mad that their friend, who they think is dumber, is making 150. Next thing you know, the 100 grand guy has upended his life. So I worry that I'm getting a lot of people in their first 5 years knee-jerking and making radical shifts and going to a totally different sector of the industry where they have to start over as year one. That is not a good thing, and I'm hoping that I'm not influencing people to do that. On the other end of it, I do get messages from people. I've had about 30, 40 this year alone that are, I got a 30% raise because of what you're sharing. Not that I brought the data in, but it was that I just knew to advocate for myself. I was able to walk in and say, someone in Houston should be making this. So I did. Or for the very first time, I got an offer and I leveraged it against my current job, and I actually took the offer rather than taking the counter offer. I'm very anti-counter offer unless it's too good to be true. But yeah, I mean, I want that information to be received by people who are, I want it to be received by millennials, 10 years in the industry or so, who have been sitting still for too long. I want it to be received by women especially, who I believe stay longer than they should because maybe they want to start a family and they feel like they can't go work another job because they don't know how flexible that job will be with starting a family. Very flexible, it turns out. There's a lot of new things coming out. Benefits and such, and improved maternity leave, and you don't have to be afraid that you're going to get fired if you're pregnant, usually. I want that information to be received by people who've been sitting on their laurels for too long. I do not want the information to be received by people who are going to upend their life. I cannot control who's going to see that information with anxiety or see that information and be productive, so I hate it. I hate it.
How many respondents do you get?
I get thousands, like when I do that, because there's two different, and people, I don't know if people know this, but there's two different ways I do it. One is I collect, and I haven't done it this year yet, I did it last year. I had a Google Doc that was 10 or 12 questions, said, where do you work and what is this, whatever, and it was a spreadsheet that had about 5,000 respondents. It had 6,000 respondents. 1,000 of the respondents, the data was useless, which means I want to be clear that 1 out of every 6 people in insurance couldn't manage a spreadsheet. it was a menu, like it was a whole quiz, survey monkey type thing. Couldn't for the life of them fill it out. Where do you work? 200,000. Just answering it was in like to the point where the actuary who helped me with it was like, I literally can't even clean this. It's so bad. So we had 5,000 pieces of usable data, and it was great. It said, where they work, which I later just took out and put big broker, small broker. Their salary now, their salary then, their bonus, how their bonus was determined. Is it discretionary or is it tied to production? Is it capped? A couple other things like, what does your boss rate you on a 1 to 5? I think it's important to know the quality of your review. I don't think people are honest with that, so we have to take it with a grain of salt. What city they're in, male or female, and their race. So people fill that out, and that was cool because then they can just filter it to where they are. I'm going to do it again, but I've got to be even more careful because there was a lot of people who, although the employer was obscured, felt that they're the only, I'm the only black man who's an underwriter in this town in Ohio. Seems like you're still outing me. So I have to sort of find a way to maybe even remove the city and make it large city, small city, medium cost of living, be a little more responsible. With that data, I was more comfortable with. The second thing I do, and this is more of just a fun read, is I have people answer it in the survey box in the stories, where I just say, tell me about your bonus. So people just go, female, 39, 10 years in the industry, 88,000 got a bonus, and my raise is now 92,000. To which we'd all go, what the hell? Like, you're how old and you're making that? You should be making a lot more. And then 10 people come in, I'll hire her, and it becomes a great thing. That's more of a party, but that data is not data. That's snippets. Those are teaser trailers. I get people who take screenshots and try to write it down. Like, that's a highlight reel. And more importantly, it is plucked from the pile that is my inbox. Just like, you need the spreadsheet. I post it once a week, the link. That's what you need.
So is that link running at all times, or do you do it like once you're like beginning of middle of January with post 1/1s, or like or do you have it like that's always running and
The link I need to post to my profile. I've been putting it in stories. I'll post it to my profile. I just haven't yet because I actually haven't been able to. I need to figure out how to do that. The permanent links are weird, and I was like having a hard time opening the profile. I just haven't, but by the time this airs, it'll be available. So if you're listening, go to my profile and it'll be the thing. Because what I originally did was I didn't post the data. I had an actuary model out all the data because I didn't, you don't know what those numbers are telling you, and so you got to get those nerds to do it. And it was great because he was able to show me things like it's not that women and men are being paid differently, it's that the average amount of time women were staying at their job was longer. I had said, how long have you been at your firm? And they had said 7 years, 8 years, and whereas the men were more often 3 and 4. So it showed that they were leaving, they were chasing the next opportunity, and women were staying, they wanted stability. And because of that, there were more women in lower roles, which is why when they do gender pay gaps, it's not, is this account executive being paid the same as that account executive? It's how many account executives are there versus account managers who are still women. Why are the men moving up and the women aren't? They're moving to another job. They're getting hired from outside. So it's showing trends in how we chase promotions. As we know, you've got to leave your firm to get it, and the men are leaving the firm. Same with white people versus people of color. That was the same things that we were showing, and so it was a more behavioral trend because these big firms have very sophisticated HRs. They're not stupid. They put stuff in pay bands. They know not to pay two people in the same position radically different amounts. There's a range, but they don't go nuts. It was more, again, about what people were doing and how long they were staying there. And so he did show that, but again, it didn't dive in deep enough. And so what I then did was just released all the data, removing the employers. So people could take the spreadsheet and use it how they saw fit. Print it out, bring it into your boss. Be like, look at this. Account execs in Houston at the big 3 firms are making X amount of money. You're paying me 80% of that. Help me out here.
Oh, nice. So how best can listeners, on the rare possibility that they aren't already following you, how best can people get involved with the hard market, and any etiquette points for those who are already involved?
Just message it. If you're on the site and you have something to tell me, message it. I don't always see it. I've had people have to message me a couple times. I have an email, thehardmarket@gmail.com. I check it occasionally.
30,000 emails, like close.
Yeah, no,
close window.
It's actually the opposite. It's not a lot at all, and so I forget that I have it.
Yeah.
I think you guys contacted me via the email, and I think like Cordy have to come after me like 8 times. Like, will you please answer my email? Because it's it's not my business email, so I don't see it. But yeah, I mean, I have people. I've had a few come in and say like, you've posted this story, and can you, if you can get around to it, like, this is incorrect. Can you clean it up like this? And I'll clean it up. I'm not gonna make it a PR announcement, but if it's straight up wrong, of course I'll fix it.
When
I
all
don't wanna
those
give people bad info.
Yeah, and all these notes and links to your account, to your email and stuff, if you want the email, will be in our show notes. So we'll put everything so people can go to our show notes, find everything they need.
Yeah, definitely share intel. My other favorite thing that people do is they share. There's inside jokes that have developed by accident, and
We were bonding over this before
we're bonding
the show.
over this.
Yeah.
There's just like, if I'm at a conference or something, I made a joke, in 2021, I think, about chicken fingers. My favorite thing. A favorite drunk bar food is just a big plate of chicken fingers and a bowl of ranch. And so I made some joke about that, and I made it a couple times, and now it's become this thing that is associated with the hard market. And so now anytime anybody gets a plate of chicken fingers, or there's a chicken finger joke, something middle class fancy's got a thing about chicken tendies, it comes to me. So probably 50 messages a day about chicken fingers, 25 messages a day about tanks. They know I love tanks, or that I love history. So they'll send me that sort of stuff. That's really fulfilling. Because like you can make a one-off joke and people remember it, and that's how you know they're watching and they're laughing along.
Yeah. And it makes it where they're like going through every single I think you are the only account that I will go through every single thing in the story. Because mostly like 1 or 2 and I skip to the next part.
Individual.
Yeah.
It was like
There's gold throughout this whole thing, even if it's like memes that I'm enjoying, or like those like tendies jokes or the tank jokes.
it's like,
Yeah.
I know
It's in there, so it's like you just keep going through it. So
it tells you how many view your stories, and under 10,000 it gives you the exact number. So I've seen times where like a story will be like 8912, and the next stories at 8912. I'm like, literally not one of you dropped off. Like, not one of you had a kid screaming at you. You went to that next story. And I was talking about nonsense, which is fun. And that's answers your question about why where the responsibility comes to be balanced in this is because I have the attention of people. So don't be a jerk. Like, let them shape, it's the voice of the people, let them shape what is being said. You just don't get to spout off with what you want. Sometimes I do, if I get really impassioned about something, but I try to keep it somewhat balanced and somewhat reflective of what is coming to me in the messages.
Yeah. No. This has been an excellent time. Like, I'm a nerd already about it, and I'm a massive fan, so
Yeah, actually,
very much enjoyed this.
Good outcome from Meet Your Hero.
Yeah,
You actually,
yeah.
mega fan.
And Ben
Success.
is almost going to download Instagram now. We'll update you as to when Ben
He's not going to do
updates
it.
his Instagram.
Jared's going to ask you to.
It goes against his ethos. He's not going to do
He's
it.
horrified of the idea.
I did watch a YouTube tutorial on how to download Instagram. It was not very fulfilling.
So that's what
How'd you download YouTube?
Good question. Browser-based computing.
Yeah, exactly.
Chrome OS all the way.
This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Happy to do it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Reinsurance Podcast. If you enjoyed our show, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review to let us know how we're doing, preferably 5 stars. For more insights and updates, follow us on LinkedIn and visit our website at supercede.com/podcasts. You'll find the links in the show notes.